Coming to you live from OpenStack Days Israel, the 7th event of OpenStack in Israel. This is the OpenStack Days event and OpenStack podcast. With me is Mark Collier. Hi there.
All right. Thank you. It's great to be here. This is my second time to make it to Israel for the OpenStack Day event. And it's incredible how much it's grown. So I'm just amazed by the work of the whole organization here. And it's great to be back.
Excellent. And I know that you've been a great supporter actually in Austin, and you did the talk with Kobe Holcher back then, and kind of looking into that. And how do you compare the advancement of OpenStack in the rest of the world to the OpenStack state here?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's been so amazing that's helped drive the advancement all over the world is some of the very early adopters, like LivePerson with Kobe's leadership there, who really got involved very early on when a lot of other people were not ready to take the leap and try OpenStack out, and really kind of did a lot of work to document best practices, help think about upgrades, and really actually make OpenStack itself better as we've had many upgrades to the software every 6 months since LivePerson got started. So I think some of the communities that were really active early on, like here, I mean, this is the 7th OpenStack Day. That's probably a record, I don't know, but I can tell you, like, this morning was one of the best blocks of content that I've ever seen at an OpenStack Day. I mean, it was just one user after another talking about what they're doing. AT&T's got their research center here. I mean, I'm just blown away, and I think that's really helping to drive adoption around the world and other OpenStack days.
And if you think about, the challenges of what people are still facing with OpenStack, in the rest of the world compared to here, do you see similarities? Are there things that are coming? I heard you talking about education and some other things that are building up that might create a smoother experience for people with OpenStack.
Yeah, I think really what we're seeing here is that it started with sharing the code, and now what people really need to know, because there's so many decisions you have to make when you're deploying and operating OpenStack, is what are those decisions that have been made by the people who are successful, like the LivePersons of the world, the AT&Ts of the world. And that's starting to manifest itself in things like reference architecture. So we're starting to see some users share, not just what their configuration options are, but all the way down to the hardware, networking, compute storage networking, all these decisions that are being made. So when someone has a successful OpenStack cloud, especially for a particular use case, maybe for a microservices kind of application like Kobe talked about, where they have 100 plus microservices and they're using Kubernetes, trying to understand what is that lamp stack of cloud, if you will, that combination of open source technologies. It's OpenStack and other pieces. It's various pieces of hardware and drivers and plugins. Really sharing that level of detail is what's going to help OpenStack adoption grow to the next level from here.
So one last question is that, what's the name of the US Army that I think he was referring to? The guy in the Israeli Army?
The NSA?
The NSA, yeah. I should have remembered that. Yeah. I thought he mentioned something else, but okay. And that was mentioned when in OpenStack? So I'm going to ask you about collaboration, your phrase of collaborate or die.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use that as an example of the collaborate and die thing, and how that example manifested here. And
Sure. Yeah, I think it was the Portland Summit.
Portland Summit?
Where,
Okay. Yep. So one of your phrases that I think was mentioned also here is the collaborate and die. And actually we've seen a very interesting example of that today with the NSA presenting something in Atlanta, and then hearing the intelligence organization here kind of taking ideas from that and actually embracing it. What is that? How do you see the collaboration in OpenStack happening?
Yeah, I think one of the points when it comes to how critical collaboration is it's happening at so many different layers and levels. Within organizations, the largest organizations in the world, governments, largest companies in the world, they're fundamentally changing how they organize and get work done and becoming more open. We had the intelligence service here today talking that very seldom it would come out and collaborate in the open, but they're changing how they engage as an organization because that's what they need to do to be successful. And within OpenStack is another level where you see, the OpenStack community collaborating with other open source communities, and not sort of getting too siloed and with our blinders on and thinking about what's just happening in OpenStack. Well, every OpenStack cloud has other technologies in it, whether it's KVM as a hypervisor, maybe it's going to have RabbitMQ, it's going to have, of course it's written in Python, it runs on Linux, and then at the higher levels you have like the Kubernetes or the Cloudifys. So there's so many different layers, and we just have to take a bigger look at the overall rate of innovation happening in cloud computing and realize OpenStack is a part of it. It's not all of it. And that's the same thing you see when these organizations, like these different government organizations that are starting to collaborate out in the open. And I think it's pretty amazing to see the whole world is really changing. The biggest companies in the world are actually opening up, and I think that's a great thing. So it's very exciting.
Actually, that leads me to the last question. I mean, you're going to have a panel on NFV.
That's right.
And we were discussing just earlier on how OpenStack is not just changing the culture of big organization, but also changing the standard organization in which NFV has been pretty much dominant on. Can you say what you think about that change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very positive change in terms of how standards are emerging. And emerging, I guess, is a key word there, because it's emerging from work, from running code, prototypes. If you look at the network functions virtualization or NFV work, if you look at how that's going towards like 5G and the IoT and all these things that are driving explosion in data, it's really being driven for the first time, I think, from a telecom perspective, by code first. And there are, of course, standards bodies that are very active, but what these users, like these telecom operators, are saying is, we want to value speed. Speed is so important in today's economy with a competitive environment. And, in a lot of ways, I think you see kind of a reversal of the typical workflow in terms of, the traditional old model was a standards body might write a spec before there's any technology created. And part of this is because technology, the mix of hardware and software, is shifting more and more towards software. And so this fundamentally changes how you're going to see things like 5G provided. It's going to be through software. So when it comes to software, open source is the fastest way to collaborate. And when it comes to making standards, the best thing to do is to write some code and get it in the lab and start trying it out, rather than sort of waiting to have a finalized spec that's kind of set in stone before you ever start creating the technology. So it's really changed the workflow, and I think it's for the better.
Thank you very much. I think that, again, I think that personally that if anything, the change in the way standards are working, the organization are working, and even the rest of the industry, networking and non-networking guys together, couldn't have happened without OpenStack. And I think for me, that's already a proof of its value. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.